You're citing inconclusive claims, right? You don't know what the sun is. You don't know if there's multiple suns. You don't know how the sun works. You don't know what the bigger picture with regarding the sun is. What's wrong? Reality? Or our understanding of what the sun is? They've lied to us about the Earth. We can verify that through demonstrable reality. So would it be such a great shock that they'd lied to us about what the sun is? Hello? So I'll ask you again. Who's lying? Is our demonstrable physical reality lying to us? Or have we been told lies about what the sun is and what it actually does?
What is demonstrable reality? Is anything real? Are our brains just magicians playing tricks on our, quote, bodies? Sometimes I like to check in with my favorite rabbit hole, the flat earth community, or more people covering flat earth drama. SciManDan is an algorithm favorite of mine that pops up every once in a while when there's something juicy happening. And boy did he deliver. LevelEarthObserver, the ranting flat earther from the beginning of this video, is very upset at another flat earther named Jaren, because the latter is going to Antarctica on a game show style expedition set up by this priest, Will Duffy, called the Final Experiment, with currently 3 flat earthers and 8 globalists, in hopes that they may or may not see the midnight sun. Why? Well, to prove once and for all whether or not the Earth is flat. It's not. Why are they doing this? Why would going to Antarctica prove without a shadow of a doubt that the Earth is either flat or a globe? Well, this is a map of Antarctica. Sorry, this is a map of Antarctica and the world, which it surrounds. In flat Earth lore, the sun and moon travel around the Earth like this, in an elaborate two-body problem which creates our familiar day-night cycle. Now, in globe Earth lore, the Earth is tilted on its axis and circles the sun, which makes it daytime for close to 24 hours at the South Pole, where Antarctica is located. And the Final Experiment aims to go to this place that no person has ever reliably explored before, using this charter service that takes people there every year, and see firsthand the sun as it travels past the world shelf. If it doesn't go anywhere and instead does one of these things where it goes up and down in the sky a little bit, then that proves the globe Earth theory true. Or as Flat Earth Dave puts it,
one of the arguments that people give is on a flat Earth, you can't have a 24-hour sun, a midnight sun in Antarctica. And I totally agree. But there is no midnight sun in Antarctica.
That's it. Antarctica and the 24-hour sun. Dave Weiss made me realize the single most important thing when it comes to the Final Experiment is that both sides agree.
Jaren is potentially saying that a 24-hour sun, if seen down in Antarctica, does destroy flat Earth.
Both sides agree that if there is a 24-hour sun, we live on a globe with Antarctica as an island at the bottom of it. And both sides agree that if there's not a 24-hour sun, we live on a flat plain with Antarctica encircling the rest of the continents. This was the most important foundation for the Final Experiment. Agreement from both sides on what the results of the experiment would prove.
LevelEarthObserver does not accept these terms. In fact, he doesn't even accept flat earther as a definition for himself.
So I'm in a little bit of a spat with a flat earther.
I'm not a flat earther. I don't push maps and models. I simply stand by physical demonstrations, demonstrable reality.
I'm sorry. So I'm in a spat with a demonstrable realist. There is this channel here called LevelEarthObserver, and he has done a couple videos about the Final Experiment, as you can see here.
He doesn't even know what demonstrable reality is, and yet he keeps lying and misrepresenting a person who stands by demonstrable reality.
Okay, serious disclaimer up front here. I want to touch on something that makes me, on some level, sympathize with LevelEarthObserver. He's described growing up poor and undereducated without having access to television.
In my early years here, I was brought up in extreme poverty. Incredibly poor. Things were so tough, at certain points we didn't even have enough food, okay? That's how tough they were. We certainly didn't have a TV for most of the time.
And when I lived back in Chicago, I used to do my laundry at a coin laundry all the time. And there was this church service that provided free food and laundry to the homeless, like every Saturday, which was my laundry day. And I remember this guy telling me how he doesn't trust the government to provide him those things because, quote, the math doesn't add up. Poverty shouldn't exist. There's enough money in circulation for everybody to benefit benefit from the system and not go hungry. The only explanation, therefore, for what he's experiencing is that it's being done to him deliberately by the government.
I now believe it was done on purpose as some form of training done by my mother. When I did finally sit down and watch television, I questioned all of it. You watch the news, they sit there, say things in such a matter of fact.
And in a lot of ways, he's not wrong. I mean, it's easy to forget that historically, education has only been available to those with the money to pay for it. And therefore, it's really easy to see the entire education system as a tool of the elites. And now you may recognize that I sound like a conspiracy theorist.
If we want to understand the root causes of why these phenomena are emerging, we have to look at the social, societal factors as well.
And if you look at who follows QAnon, it is not just the working class. Nobody has any reason to trust the political class. They have no reason to trust the media. They have no reason to trust the government, especially over the course of the last year.
Why people are untethered from that particular reality, I think, is just because majority of them, not all of them, elected officials on both sides, don't experience that life every day. The life that everybody has been living, where they're losing economic power, they're losing kind of their feeling of security economically speaking, and they want someone to blame and or to help them.
Why should I have faith in a government that has deserted me and my family? And then with that mentality, people become open for conspiracy theories, for big lies, etc.
And yet when you question it, it just falls flat on its face in most instances. Unless, of course, what they're telling you suits the narrative.
And there's plenty of theories and studies out there linking poverty to belief in conspiracy theories. And before I go on, I just wanted to clarify my thoughts about LevelEarthObserver and why I don't personally feel bad dunking on him the rest of this video. First, LevelEarthObserver's beliefs are a result of his upbringing and not something to be inherently mocked in and of themselves. His channel began 3 years ago in 2021 at the height of COVID, when Earth-scale conspiracy theories were at their peak. Since then, he's been presented with demonstrable evidence multiple times, and he's shifted his goalposts to match the new information every single time, as evidenced in the Sun speech.
You don't know if there's multiple suns.
Having a YouTube channel with over 12,000 subscribers has now inflated his ego, creating a toxic meta-social relationship with his audience. This has now trapped him in a situation where if he ever admits that he's wrong, he'll have to admit that his entire brand has been built on misinformation and YouTube beef.
We need to take this to the grave. We cannot tell anybody. This changes literally this changes everything.
And how can he do that when there's people in his comment section telling him that he could be their long-lost brother? That's how similar they are. Toxic parasocial relationship. I personally don't believe that LevelEarthObserver believes his own medicine at this point. On some level, I think he knows that he's pushing misinformation and just doesn't care because it benefits his ego and probably his wallet.
That's not an ego thing. Demonstrable reality isn't wrong, is it?
And that's why I'm about to smack him around like a flat piñata. So let's talk about demonstrable realism. I'm gonna let LevelEarthObserver talk himself into a hole explaining his belief system because he's repeatedly said he's not a flat earther, he's a demonstrable realist.
You tried to cite me as being a map-pushing flat earther when I've got the template to destroy the globe earth and it can be verified by all. This guy's finished.
Despite having never demonstrated anything on his channel up to this point as far as I can tell, and he's got upset at people like SciManDan for getting his platform wrong in the past.
Some globies are saying it's impossible to be a demonstrable realist without being a globe believer. Others are claiming I don't stand by demonstrable reality. I just say it.
A LevelEarthObserver, right? I enjoyed some of his work, not others of his work, but when something is brought to your attention, hey, we're going to go observe this demonstrable reality, and then you've got somebody who refuses to acknowledge it or whatever, I mean, that's on him, that's not on me.
I'm struggling with something, which is I thought I knew what a demonstrable realist was, and I thought you were a demonstrable realist, but now I'm questioning that.
Demonstrable reality is reality, but I am going to entertain you and help you. Demonstrable reality is every demonstration on this earth. I don't entertain sophistry, and I do not entertain stargazing observations that have no practicality. It's all psychological. But here's the thing, it means nothing when you stand on the things that are simply true, which is why I won't entertain or stand by anything that can't be demonstrated in a scientific manner.
The problem is that the two concepts, demonstrable realism and flat earth theory, are fundamentally opposed to each other. Like two sides of a spectrum. Demonstrable realism realists accept empirical demonstrable evidence that can be repeated and verified using the scientific method, like going to Antarctica to see the midnight sun. And flat earthers reject evidence.
That way I don't put myself out there to be debunked by anyone.
Or reinterpret new information to conform to their flat earth model.
The only debunked videos that you'll see regarding me will be men, believe it or not, grown men defending Airfix models and CGI fails and harness fails. This is all the propagandists offer up.
But wait a minute, the final experiment is trying to seek out demonstrable truth. The demonstrable truth of what the sun does in Antarctica.
If there is a circling sun, then it means this place is far more magical and mysterious than I originally thought. How that would work in the bigger picture of things, I don't know. But as I've already stated, and everyone can prove, demonstrable reality proves the globe is impossible. So if anything does come out of this final experiment that is good, it potentially can get rid of models, concepts, and we can replace those things with demonstrable truths. And in doing so, we're getting a lot closer to the actual truth of the bigger picture of where we are.
LevelEarthObserver claims to be a demonstrable realist, yet criticizes and casts doubt on anybody demonstrating reality. You know, there's a word for that: hypocrisy.
You do not know.
Since I've been on YouTube, I've realized that things that may exist in real life don't exist on the internet, and people would rather, they'll lie and they'll throw other people under the bus before they'll ever just be honest, or they're wrong, right? So people just have this problem on the internet with admitting that they're wrong.
It's not an ego thing.
Flat Earth is melting from the inside, and I love it. Now, for those of you who don't know, Jaren has agreed to take the Flat Earth complimentary spot on the final experiment trip to Antarctica in December. And this is the crux of the final experiment and why I think it won't be successful. If Jaren goes there, he will see a 24-hour sun, and one of two things will happen off the back of that. The Flat Earth community will either say it doesn't matter and proves nothing, like LevelEarthObserver is saying here, or they will say that Jaren has been paid off or is a shill or has changed sides or something like that.
The unfortunate reality of debunking flat Earth is that it's largely futile, at least for the actual purpose of persuading flat earthers. And that's honestly the frame that most flat Earth debunking lives within. The nonsense claims of flat earthers forming the starting point of a process of puzzle solving, or a discussion of geography, or a mini lesson in optics, because at the end of the day, flat earthers are not available to be persuaded.
What a relief for those that earn their living from flat Earth videos.
Now, LevelEarthObserver and SciManDan have a storied history together, tangled up over the course of their YouTube career. And this little spat that I'm talking about has already produced a response video from LevelEarthObserver in like the weirdest possible way.
So again, Dan, you show your dishonest ways, but we're going to use you as an example today because it's one of your subscribers who's made a video about me that we're going to use to highlight the skullduggery and the dark ways of YouTube, courtesy, indirectly, of you.
He grabs the lowest hanging fruit imaginable, this video created by one of SciManDan's subscribers, and I'll admit right now, I'm not a subscriber to SciManDan, I don't know him, he just pops up in my algorithm every once in a while.
Because this person in question has got all their beliefs regarding me from you, SciManDan.
And I'm not even like a scientist, I'm not even like one of those people who... I'm interested in...
It's obvious you don't have a Scooby-Doo about science, because if you did, you realise how silly you look and how silly the man you watch, SciManDan, actually is. It's not an ego thing.
Now, the video that LevelEarthObserver has chosen is a classic example of response content, like this video I'm doing right here, or the LevelEarthObserver video that I'm talking about right now. The formula is super simple. You see a video on the internet, you have an opinion about it, and you make a video expressing that opinion.
You should have put two and two together by now and realised what SciManDan's showing you in relation to my content and what he's telling you about me is incorrect. Actually, it's dishonest. But again, the education system leaves the general public with the discernment of a pebble. They're like lost souls, finding themselves in the middle of a field, surrounded by landmines. They have no map, they do not know what to do. It's not an ego thing.
You know, this is most streamer content. Moist Critical, Hasanabi, those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head. This person is not those personalities. And hey, neither am I. We'll see, maybe this video will get a response. Especially to part 5 when I get into the science of spheres.
We're going to have a look at the content you produce in a minute, and it's quite dark and quite disturbing.
Now, Flat Earth, and especially the brand of Flat Earth that LevelEarthObserver is putting forth, has its roots in something called Zeticism. This was a belief put forth by the grandfather of modern Flat Earth theory, Samuel Rowbotham, the author of Zetetic Astronomy, The Earth Not a Globe. And he's the guy that came up with the classic Flat Earth map that we're all familiar with the North Pole at the center and the Antarctic ring around the outside. Now, Rowbotham was a well-known snake oil salesman who 4 years before his book came out at the age of 46 married his 15-year-old roommate, and they had 15 kids, one of whom he apparently poisoned and killed. Over the course of his career, he claimed to be a chemist, physician, journalist, and soap boiler? Oh, so he's like a Fight Club fan. And he had a degree in precisely none of these things. One of the many patents he filed was for it says here, life-preserving cylindrical railway carriage. Weird. Okay. Anyway, Rowbotham based Zeticism and his flat earth theories on a simple belief. If you want to understand nature, you should rely on information from your own senses.
Your bias should be towards what is simply true. Not what you want to be true, not what you wish to be true, but what is true, however uncomfortable that truth may be. It's not an ego thing.
There's a quote from the Flat Earth Society that captures the idea pretty well. The world looks flat. The bottoms of clouds are flat. The movement of the sun. These are all examples of your senses telling you that we do not live on a spherical, heliocentric world. This is using what's called an empirical approach, or an approach that relies on information from your senses.
I'm not a flat earther. I don't push maps and models. I simply stand by physical demonstrations, demonstrable reality.
Well, you are a rare breed, Level Earth Observer, that is for sure. Most flat earthers do subscribe to that model.
The sun, moon, and stars were placed in the firmament. What it says, biblically speaking, they're just lights, dude. They're lights. And yes, the moon. And here's a startling thing. We believe the sun and the moon are the same size, just like they appear in the sky.
Really?
They say, oh, they're further away, millions of miles.
Really?
They're the same, man. They're both lights. They do different things, but they're the same size.
Okay, so now we can start to see how these two incompatible perspectives can start to make sense together, right? For flat earthers like LevelEarthObserver, demonstrable reality is physical phenomena that we can observe with our own senses. Because as we all know, our senses never lie to us.
Let me spell it out for you, Jared. Demonstrable reality is physical demonstrations we can all test and verify for ourselves. Real physics. See, you're citing observations rather than physicality, physical, real-world substance, real demonstrations involving the substance, rather than long-range observations that you bring all sorts of optical variables into play. So your sky observation in Antarctica isn't demonstrable reality. It's an observation, one that has no physicality whatsoever. So it's obviously not demonstrable reality, is it? And it's obvious you don't know what demonstrable reality is. I don't need to entertain his optical pantomime when I've got physical demonstrable reality back in me that can be tested and verified by all.
So obviously, because of this, LevelEarthObserver should be jumping at the chance to go to Antarctica to perform his various in-person experiments with pendulums and the like, so he can observe the results with his own senses, to prove once and for all demonstrably that the Earth is flat, right? Right? No, obviously he would rather cast doubt on the entire concept and make a million videos trying to discredit it, because the experiments he describes don't hold up to scrutiny in a world governed by gravity. So dismiss and discredit.
You do not know.
Let's take his major claim from this video explaining what demonstrable realists are.
Because globe believers cite stuff like this as proof of curvature, and yet we all know now any so-called curvature is optical and not physical. That's not my opinion.
This is almost word for word one of the arguments that Rowbotham put forth in his book. One of the fundamental arguments of zetetic astronomy is that standing still water is flat. And if the Earth is a globe, then the surface of large bodies of water must be convex. Or as LevelEarthObserver puts it,
again, that's a demonstrable fact based on large standing bodies of water do not have the ability to display convexity upon its surface. That is a measurable fact that can be tested and verified by all.
And this might sound like complex science to your average bricklayer, people LevelEarthObserver seems to enjoy playing mind games with at his local tavern.
As most of you should be aware, I'm a tower crane operator. I work in the construction industry, and because of my job I spend my days in an elevated position high above the cities of the UK. I see these guys all the time, on rooftops, all over the cities of the UK. And the job I'm on at the moment, I've been here for 11 months. I could sense the atmosphere as soon as I walked in. One guy with a really cheeky grin, "Here, drive, what's this about you thinking the earth's flat?" And the whole canteen erupted with laughter. I spent 2 or 3 minutes destroying the straw man misrepresentations that resided in these bricklayers' heads, of course put there by the mainstream.
Hang on, did I just discover secret beef in the construction industry between the tower crane operators and the bricklayers? Is flat earth theory just a cover-up for a war that's been brewing for decades? But wait, a globe earth discredits the bricklayers because bricks can never lay perfectly flat on a round earth. That means LevelEarthObserver is a turncoat. Anyway, let's break down his claim, based entirely on the fact that gravity, while a thing that we can prove demonstrably exists and how it works mathematically, is still just a theory. In the flat Earth model, gravity is caused by the continuously accelerating flat plane of Earth moving up in y space, giving us the illusion of gravity as things are pushed downward. So why does this matter? Well, if gravity were a lie perpetuated by mainstream scientists, with no demonstrable evidence to back it up, then large standing bodies of water wouldn't display a curve. They'd be pressed flat against the plane of the firmament. That's why we call it sea level, am I right? Now, YouTuber Dan Olson has done this experiment. He documented all of it, went out to a lake in Canada with a camera, and made an hour-long video essay disproving the flat Earth, using demonstrable, repeatable evidence that LevelEarthObserver can go do himself. Let's take a look.
From the dam that makes up the southwest bank of Lake Minnewanka to the rock slide on the far shore where Aylmer Canyon meets the lake, you have a line of sight of 7 kilometers, about 4 1/3 miles, which is far enough that the Earth curves away around 3.5 meters or 11 feet. We can see that going from just barely above the water's surface to an average adult height, the height of a hidden object at 7 kilometers goes from 3.46 meters to only 0.4 meters. This means that something the size of a tree at or near the water level of the lake should appear just about whole when viewed from a standing position, but then be visibly obscured by getting down to the surface of the water. So the experiment should be pretty simple. Pick a landmark on the far side of the lake and record it at the same focal length and distance from a couple different elevations above the water's surface. So make sure to include an identifiable landmark in the shots to make it easy to pinpoint exactly where you're standing and where you're looking. Everything gets documented. Where was the camera sitting on the beach? Approximately how high above the surface? Even screen caps of where GPS says you're standing. And this time, you make sure to bring the jibs so you can smoothly go from standing to the surface of the water in a single motion and it's a shame it's not enough.
People like LevelEarthObserver will never go do these experiments themselves because they already know the truth, that the Earth is a sphere. And that's why they get so upset at true believers like Jaren for going along with it.
It's obvious Jaren's ego now is involved in this, so much so that he's acting on impulse and emotion rather than any kind of logical template. He doesn't know whether he's coming or going.
They are an existential threat to unreality. The 3 people going on this expedition are hypothetically willing to be proven wrong, and LevelEarthObserver isn't. He's invested too much of himself into proving to people that he's correct, and to be proven demonstrably wrong would ruin him.
What happens to the ground that you've measured is flat? What happens to that? Does that slowly start to warp and bend and become a curve because you've seen something in the sky? On one side, he's measured the Earth to be flat, but on another side, if he sees something in the sky in December in Antarctica, reality, physical reality, is somehow now wrong. I mean, wow.
Are the flat earthers going to be proven demonstrably wrong? In 1864, a year before his book came out, before his wife was 18, Rabotham got challenged by some scientists to prove that his theory was correct. And they went off to look at a lighthouse that was 14 miles off the coast and measure where on the horizon it sat. The scientists predicted that it would be lowered down on the horizon so it was barely visible as it went around the curvature of the Earth. And Rabotham was like, no, it's not going to be sunk at all. Now, when they actually did the experiment, they were kind of both wrong. Yes, the lighthouse did dip below the horizon, but not as far as the scientists predicted. And that gave Rabotham wiggle room to move his goalposts. Sure, he wasn't 100% correct, but he wasn't 100% wrong either. And perhaps people like Jaren and Flat Earth Dave know that there is going to be some kind of wiggle room in what they do. Or maybe not.
And what I appreciate about Flat Earth Dave is that he, possibly more than anyone else, is willing to put his money where his mouth is.
One of the things I find most amusing about arguments is that usually one person is way louder and more animated about their beliefs than the other person. They're also usually the one who's on the wrong side of the argument. Now, I don't know a lot about LevelEarthObserver other than he's a flat earther and a fraud.
I've never lied. You've still not given evidence for the lies and the grifter accusations whatsoever.
Followers of this channel know I have a bizarre fascination with cults, and this is a great opportunity to talk about the people who start them. Am I calling LevelEarthObserver a cult leader? No, I'm just saying he displays a lot of the red flags. Red flag number 1, casting doubt. LevelEarthObserver starts off here by going after Jaren, trying to discredit him within the cult. I mean, community.
Jaren has already shut down this final experiment 6 months before it's supposed to begin. How, you're asking? Well, the very community in which Jaren is supposed to be representing in December in Antarctica, that said community don't even trust Jaren anymore.
When someone in a position of power perceives a threat to that power, one tactic they may take to consolidate the community around themselves is to go on the offensive against the perceived threat by casting doubt. What the cast doubt spell does to their followers is head off a threat before it even becomes a threat. And the final experiment is an existential threat to Flat Earth Observer's power.
Now we need to address this little bit of propaganda from Jaren. It's obvious they're trying to hijack demonstrable reality.
By throwing Jaren under the bus and painting him as a liar and a fraud, he can use that perceived untrustworthiness to discredit the entire experiment itself and turn his followers' eyes away from what he knows it will inevitably prove, that the Earth is a sphere. Once we get to part 3, we're going to see how Will Duffy predicted this exact response to his experiment. They're going to see the midnight sun, and LevelEarthObserver is going to be out of a job, and probably mocked. Red flag number 2, directing speech. This one's a little harder to pick up on because it's subtle, but listen to how Flat Earth Observer tells you how the community thinks, and tells you what you believe is true.
The very community he's supposed to be representing don't even trust him. So what is the point in sending a man that's supposed to be representing a community to Antarctica when that said community do not even trust the words that come out of his mouth? So regardless of what he says, it's not going to be enough because the community that he's supposedly representing don't trust a single word that comes out of his mouth. Because essentially now everyone, pretty much everyone in the community has lost all faith in you. They don't trust you, and therefore there's no point you go into Antarctica because no one's going to believe whatever you've got to say anyway.
By presenting his opinions as not only fact, but the commonly agreed upon way to think, he reverses normality. That's a super important concept to remember when dealing with cultists. I mean, community spokespeople, and normality here is like this bell curve. This is like a graph of popular thought. That curve's almost like a little half sphere, isn't it? Now, most people's thoughts lie somewhere here in the middle, and then your outlying thoughts like flat earth are out on the sides. A cult will go like this with the curve. Now, everything in the middle is just the brainwashed masses, the sheeple. It's only the outlying thought that actually knows the truth. Normality, commonly accepted ways of thinking? That sounds like Big Brother talking. A bonus on this red flag, listen here to how he tells you to think about globe Earth theory by prefacing it with the word impossible.
And turn it in favor of the impossible globe Earth theory.
This is the same thing that Trump does with all of his political opponents. You got Little Marco, Sleepy Joe, Laughing Kamala? Yeesh, dude's really fallen off, hasn't he? Red flag number 3, putting words in other people's mouths. This goes along with the previous point, but listen to how Flat Earth Observer tells you what Jaren is telling you. Contextually, not directly. You know, through his actions.
What Jaren's essentially saying is the molecular structure of large standing bodies of water is lying to us. He's also claiming that every tower crane and pendulum on this Earth are also lying to us. He's also claiming that every practical demonstration showing an air pressure system reside next to a vacuum is also lying to us because it needs solid separation. That's demonstrable reality, and that's the only thing I've ever claimed, yet I'm a liar. Yet what I've just stated, demonstrable reality, can be verified by every single person on this Earth. So I'm not a liar, Jared. You are, mate.
All he's doing here is using the hypothetical contextual words of the man he's trying to discredit to reintroduce all of his alleged proofs for Flat Earth. 40 mind chess, man. Now let's take a look at all those red flags strung together in LevelEarthObserver's final attack. The same one that I started the video with.
You're citing inconclusive claims, right? You don't know what the sun is. You don't know if there's multiple suns. You don't know how the sun works. You don't know what the bigger picture with regarding the sun is. You don't know that. But what you do know is stuff that we can verify for ourselves, the molecular structure of large standing bodies of water, essentially demonstrable reality. What you do know is those things tell us the globe is impossible. Fact. So what is wrong here? Demonstrable reality or your interpretation on what you think is going on in the sky, and as a result, your interpretation on reality? What's wrong? Reality or our understanding of what the sun is? They've lied to us about the Earth. We can verify that through demonstrable reality. So would it be such a great shock that they'd lie to us about what the sun is? Hello? So I'll ask you again, who's lying? Is our demonstrable physical reality lying to us? Or have we been told lies about what the sun is and what it actually does?
The first part of the final experiment is we are going to see if either side starts to change their position and what they've been saying for years. And if flat earthers all of a sudden start saying things like, well, there's actually a second sun.
You don't know if there's multiple suns.
That second sun does a 360-degree circle around your head when you visit Antarctica.
You do not know if there's some sort of optical phenomenon that goes on in certain parts of the Earth at certain times a year. Prime example would be Antarctica in December.
That's a massive change in what they've been saying all these years. They have stated emphatically that there is not a 24-hour sun in Antarctica. And the best case scenario is that there is 24 hours of light, but that the sun absolutely will not be visible for 24 hours.
Because if it appears to circle a viewer in Antarctica in December, that doesn't prove a globe. That's a fascinating observation if that is the case. It doesn't change the results of demonstrable reality, does it?
So part one, now that we are going to actually do this experiment on location in Antarctica, who is going to go back on what they've been saying all along? If they do, that means they really don't believe what they've been saying.
Huh. Well, this section's gonna be quick. That's what he did. That's exactly what LevelEarthObserver just did. He made stuff up about the sun like a cornered rat in a cave. We know how the sun works. It's a sphere of compressed gas that's continuously exploding and imploding at the same time in a process called nuclear fusion. And you can demonstrably prove that the sun is a sphere from the surface of the Earth by putting a filter over a telescope and looking at it directly. People have done this from their backyard. And I had a conversation once with an Uber driver whose boyfriend was a flat earther. And she asked me, how can you prove that the Earth is round? And I said, okay, grab a telescope, go out to the country, and look through it at the following planets: Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, Mars, Mercury, Venus, I don't know, Pluto if you count that one, Neptune. Every single other planet in the solar system is a sphere. And that was enough for her to be like, yeah, you're probably right. But this is an edutainment YouTube video. I want to educate you somehow. So why? Why do celestial objects turn into spheres? And why does it mean that the Earth also must follow that rule? There's a few reasons why objects naturally become spheres, from bubbles to planets to stars to black holes. So let's run through them. A sphere is the shape that minimizes what's called gravitational potential energy. If everything is being compressed inward towards the center of mass, then the surface will look to smooth out irregularities, like untwisting a balloon animal.
This thing with spheres, what it also does is brings the material inside of it as close to itself as it can possibly be.
In a sphere, gravitational forces are distributed evenly in all directions. The uniform distribution prevents any one part from being under more stress than any other, reducing the likelihood of structural failure.
Now here's what's interesting. For a given amount of material, surface, the shape that contains the largest volume is a sphere.
So a sphere is a perfectly stable configuration in all directions from the center, requiring the least amount of energy to maintain its form. And most things in the universe with mass are affected by gravity to some degree, even photons of light. And when a lot of smaller things collect into a larger thing, they can take on any shape, to a point. If you say, look at the asteroid belt, you'll see this. So most asteroids are hunks of rock and metal and ice, but some are spheres. Not like full-size planets, but spherical like Ceres here, which is a dwarf planet. And I know what you're thinking, like asteroids, they're made out of rock though. How could they turn into a sphere? So this is because the forces holding the rock together are stronger than the force of gravity pulling it inward.
They don't have enough gravity to overcome the rock.
Once it gains enough mass, the relationship inverts, and you get spheres. Billions of them. Since the pressure inside of a massive object increases towards the center, a spherical shape allows for the most even gradient of pressure from surface to core. And here on Earth, the ground is pretty solid, right? But underneath that, there's magma, a fluid. And fluids naturally form spheres to minimize their surface tension. Just look at any bubbles.
In a soap bubble, you have this film.
Right.
And the film wants to be as small as possible. Now, if there's any part of the film that's sticking out, it says to itself, I can make it smaller than that. So all parts of the film want to make the whole structure as small as possible. And there's only one shape that accommodates that, and that's a sphere.
And a fun fact about matter is that once you go to a certain cosmic scale, it all acts like a fluid. Say a large celestial body has an irregularity, like an off-center core. Well, the stronger concentration of gravity at that point, over like billions of years, will pull more mass towards it, eventually smoothing out all the irregularities on its surface and naturally forming a sphere. Just like Ceres in the asteroid belt, and just like planet Earth. Okay, nerd, so who figured all this stuff out? A lot of people attribute the Earth being a sphere to like Galileo, but I actually want to tell you about somebody much, much older. According to the American Physical Society, possibly the first to propose a spherical Earth based on the actual physical evidence was Aristotle, 384 to 322 BC, who listed several arguments for a spherical Earth. Ships disappear hull first when they sail over the horizon, Earth casts a round shadow on the moon during a lunar eclipse, and different constellations are visible at different latitudes. But Aristotle wasn't the guy that proved it. That was Eratosthenes of Cyrene. God, say that 10 times fast. One year, he noticed that on the summer solstice, the sun was directly overhead at noon in the city of Syene, but not in Alexandria, to the north. He measured the angle of a shadow cast by a vertical stick in Alexandria at the same time when there was no shadow in Syene.
How could it be, Eratosthenes asked, that at the same instant there was no shadow at Syene and a very substantial shadow at Alexandria?
And using this angle and the known distance between the two cities,
because he hired a man to pace out the entire distance so that he could perform the calculation I'm talking about.
Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth to about 250,000 stadia, or somewhere between 24,000 and 29,000 miles. You know, depending on how long you think an ancient Greek stadium was. Now, the actual circumference of the Earth, 24,901 miles, give or take. Eratosthenes kinda nailed it.
That's the right answer. Eratosthenes' only tools were sticks, eyes, feet, and brains, plus a zest for experiment.
I do believe we live on a globe, but I came up with the final experiment because I can't prove it. There are people who claim they've been to Antarctica and claim they've seen a 24-hour sun, but I've never done that myself. We remove all of that and we simply perform the experiment together, side by side, with an agreement ahead of time that there either will be a 24-hour sun or there won't be, and what it means depending on which one we find while we're there.
And then you look at the direction the channel's going now. Candice Owens, let's settle the debate in Antarctica. I don't even know who Candice Owens is. The only thing I do know about her is she's mainstream, and guess what? That's all I need to know. I'm not fearful of the results of whatever happens in Antarctica because the physicality of the Earth proves to us all that the globe is impossible. So it doesn't bother me. Perhaps the sun does appear to circle the viewer in Antarctica. How that would work, I don't know. I would find that fascinating. Again, that would need to be followed, explored. You need to circle Antarctica in planes, go over Antarctica in planes. It requires full exploration to fill in the gap.
So there you have it. And personally, I can't wait to watch the final experiment as it makes its fateful journey to Antarctica in 80 days. Thanks for watching. Hey, you watch this channel, right? And you like board games? Perfect, because right now my friend's board game, Black Hats, is crowdfunding, and you should go support it. And I got to sit down and playtest it recently, and it's a lot of fun. From the insistence on hacker lingo for everything, to the fun little characters drawn by a real artist, to the hackable board. Okay, what is this? It's basically an elaborate two-player game of capture the flag, where you draft a team of netrunners and hacking rigs, and then set about trying to outmaneuver your opponent and bring their sweet, precious, valuable data back to your employer. And Black Black Hats is the only board game about hacking with a hackable board. Your characters get to rearrange the tiles of the board and create different colored subnets to traverse and attack opponents, or cut them off from their sole objective, returning that beautiful data to their home terminal. The first team of elite hackers to 5 points wins, and then you get to play again, and again, and again, and again, and again, forever. So if that sounds like something you're into, I've put a link in the description to their Game Found page, which officially launches on October 1st, or you could probably just type Black Hats board game in your search engine and find it there. Like a real hacker.